The fluorescent lights at Horizon Technologies hummed a tune I'd come to hate. I stared at the email on my screen, the digital confetti on the Congratulations Brandon banner mocking me from every pixel. Brandon, 26 years old. I had trained him personally, spent hours teaching him everything I knew about systems architecture. I was 32, with 6 years at this company and a portfolio that had literally built this entire division from the ground up. And I was invisible. The hot prickle of injustice crawled up my spine as I grabbed my phone and texted my wife, Nicole. Passed over again. Brandon got the director spot. I watched the 3 dots appear on my screen, that little sign that she was typing. Then they vanished. A full minute passed before my phone finally buzzed. That sucks. On a deadline? Tacos tonight? The casual dismissal stung worse than the rejection email. I was the unseen man, invisible at work and increasingly invisible at home too. Our life in Seattle wasn't really a life anymore. It was a logistical operation, a complex dance of coordinating schedules and dividing responsibilities. Our marriage, which had started with an unplanned pregnancy when we were both 22, had become nothing more than a shared calendar app. I was what they call the default parent. I was the one who knew our daughter Ella's severe peanut allergy triggers by heart, who had memorized her preschool teacher's name and email, who knew the password for the pediatric patient portal. Nicole, constantly hustling at Summit Consulting, was a whirlwind of client dinners and urgent projects and team meetings that can't be rescheduled. Her calendar was a sea of red, busy blocks. Mine was flexible, adjusted, rearranged to fit around hers. I felt the imbalance like a physical weight pressing down on my chest, an emotional injustice that left me exhausted down to my bones. Ella was 10 when everything started to unravel. She came down with a stomach bug on a Tuesday morning, and naturally, I was the one who stayed home with her. I set myself up on the couch with my laptop, trying to work while she rested, and I let her use Nicole's iPad to keep her occupied and quiet. "What's Mommy's passcode?" she asked, holding the tablet up to me. I typed it in without thinking. Our anniversary date. Simple, predictable. As Ella opened her game, a blue iMessage bubble slid down from the top of the screen. Marcus, Summit. The preview text seared itself into my brain like a brand. Last night was, wow, I've never felt that way before. You are incredible. My blood went cold. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Last night? Nicole's mandatory team-building dinner. The one she'd said was boring but necessary when she'd texted me at 11 p.m. saying she'd be home late. My hand started shaking. "Hey, sweetie," I said to Ella, forcing my voice to sound normal. "Daddy just needs to check something real quick on Mommy's iPad, okay?" I took the tablet and locked myself in the bathroom, turning on the fan to cover any sound. The roar of it filled the small space as I sat on the closed toilet lid and started scrolling through Nicole's messages with trembling fingers. It wasn't just last night. It was a parallel life, an entire secret existence I knew nothing about. Weeks and weeks of messages. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. His side of the bed is so cold tonight." My side. She was talking about my side of the bed. "He doesn't even see me anymore, Marcus. I'm invisible to him." Each message was a fresh knife wound. Then I saw it. Their plan for the very next day. Lunch at Bellini's, 1 p.m. tomorrow. I need to see you, need to feel you. With shaking hands, I pulled up our shared family calendar. 1 p.m. tomorrow. Nicole's entry read, Dr. Patterson, dental cleaning. The lie was right there, color-coded in cheerful blue, sitting in our family calendar like it was the most normal thing in the world. I felt like I was moving underwater. Everything seemed slow and distorted. I called in sick to Horizon the next morning, my voice coming out as a hollow croak that probably sounded convincing. I dropped Ella at school like normal, hugged her tight, then drove across town to Bellini's. It was one of those places with white tablecloths and cloth napkins, the kind of restaurant we could never justify spending money at. The Seattle sun was bright that afternoon, making everything painfully, cruelly clear. I parked across the street and waited. At 12:55, I watched her arrive. She was wearing the red dress I'd bought her 2 Christmases ago, the one she'd said was too fancy and too much for her style. Then, a silver Mercedes pulled up. A man got out, tall and confident in an expensive suit. "Marcus something." I'd seen him once at Nicole's company holiday party, had shaken his hand while he looked through me like I was furniture. He kissed her right there on the sidewalk before they even reached the restaurant entrance. It wasn't a friendly kiss or a polite greeting. It was deep, possessive, the kind of kiss that showed ownership. My vision tunneled, the edges going dark. I don't remember consciously deciding to get out of the car. I don't remember walking across the street or pulling open the restaurant door. I just remember the hostess looking up, starting to say, "Can I help?" But I was already past her, my eyes locked on the window booth where they sat. They were laughing, holding hands across the table, completely absorbed in each other. I just stood there beside their table. The restaurant noise faded to a dull roar in my ears. Nicole, her smile shattered like glass. Her hand flew away from his like he'd burned her. "Liam, oh my God, what are you doing here?" I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on him, on this Marcus who thought he could take what was mine. "Marcus Reeves," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Your wife Amanda? She's still pregnant, right? Must be about 7 months now?" I remember Nicole mentioning it. His face went the color of the white tablecloth. All that confidence drained away in an instant. Then I finally looked at Nicole, at my wife, the mother of my child. "The dentist," I said quietly. "Dr. Patterson?" I shook my head slowly. "Don't be home when I get there." I turned and walked out, leaving them frozen in that booth. My hands were steady. My breathing was controlled. I felt cold and clear and absolutely certain. The house was silent when I got back, buzzing with the vibration of her unanswered calls in my pocket. I took a black trash bag from under the sink and, in a cold, methodical rage, swept all her toiletries from the bathroom counter into it. The injustice of it all threatened to suffocate me. While I was at home, worrying about her deadlines, making sure she ate, preparing tacos because she was too stressed to cook, she was living an entire other life. Building a relationship with another man, using our calendar to schedule her betrayals. I filed for divorce the next day, had the papers drawn up and served within a week. But I was blindsided by how quickly everything fell apart after that. The divorce got ugly. Really ugly. Nicole fought for primary custody, painted me as unstable because I'd confronted her in public. Her lawyers were better than mine. She got more custody time than I did. And I couldn't breathe in that city anymore. Every street corner held a memory. Every restaurant could be where they'd met. I was drowning. When Horizon, probably out of guilt for passing me over, offered me a lateral promotion to their Austin, Texas office, I grabbed it like a lifeline. It wasn't an opportunity. It was an escape. The hardest day of my life was crouching down in our apartment hallway, trying to explain to 10-year-old Ella why Daddy had to move away. Her big brown eyes filled with tears as she asked, "But why can't you just stay here?" How do you explain adult failures to a child? How do you tell your daughter that her mother's choices had shattered everything, but you're the one who has to leave? I was the one who'd been betrayed, but I was the one losing daily access to my child. 2 years passed in Austin. 2 years of stale airport coffee and 6 a.m. flights back to Seattle every other weekend. 2 years of gut-wrenching Sunday night goodbyes at the airport gate, watching Ella wave smaller and smaller as I walked toward security. My Austin apartment was a sterile white box. The only color came from Ella's drawings, carefully framed and hung on every wall. I was a FaceTime dad now, and I could see Ella learning to guard her feelings, to expect my departure, to prepare herself for the distance. Then Nicole called. It was late on a Tuesday night, and she was crying. Really crying, the kind of raw sobbing I hadn't heard from her in years. Marcus's wife had found out about the affair. She'd left him, taken the kids, filed for divorce. His life had imploded. And apparently he'd ended things with Nicole immediately after, not wanting the complication of her in his messy situation. Nicole was in therapy now, she said. She owned her brokenness. She understood what she'd done, the damage she'd caused. But she didn't ask for me back, not exactly. She asked for Ella to have her family back. "She needs you, Liam. She misses her dad so much. I miss my best friend. I miss what we used to be." That line broke me. I miss my best friend. I was so desperately lonely. I looked around my empty apartment, at the framed drawings, at the evidence of everything I'd lost. And my love for my daughter won out over my pride. I agreed to try again. 3 months later, Horizon offered me something real. director of West Coast operations based in Portland, Oregon. It was the promotion I'd been chasing for years, and it came with a significant raise and actual authority. It felt like a sign, like the universe was giving us a chance at a fresh start. We all moved to Portland. Me, Nicole, and 12-year-old Ella. We bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a good school district in Beaverton with a backyard and a maple tree. We got remarried at the Multnomah County Courthouse on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. It didn't feel like a wedding. It felt like signing a contract, a business agreement. I wasn't doing it for love or romance or passion. I was doing it for Ella, to give her the stable family she deserved. But I knew, standing there in that courthouse, that something fundamental had broken in me that day at Bellini's. Trust wasn't something that could be repaired. It was gone, permanently, like a limb that had been amputated. 7 years passed. 7 years that felt both endless and impossibly fast. Ella grew into a 17-year-old junior in high school, smart and driven, already researching colleges and planning her future. Life was stable, predictable. I was a respected director at Horizon. Nicole worked part-time at a local art gallery called Canvas and Light, something she said fulfilled her creative needs without the stress of corporate consulting. But the trust was a phantom limb. I'd feel the ache of its absence constantly. I'd tense up when Nicole laughed at a text message. I hated that I'd find myself checking the Find My Friends app on my phone, watching that little icon with her face, making sure she was where she said she'd be. I hated the warden I'd become in my own home. Always watching, always suspicious. But I couldn't help it. The wound had never healed. It had just scabbed over, ugly and permanent. The marriage was crumbling again, not with the explosive drama of Seattle, but with a slow, creeping chill that settled into every corner of the house. The old injustice was back. I was still the default parent. I was the one tracking Ella's SAT prep schedule, managing the mortgage payments, noticing when the gutters needed cleaning. Nicole had become a polite, distant roommate, always absorbed in her phone, her gallery events, her new friends from work. We were two strangers sleeping 6 inches apart in the same bed. We'd have entire conversations about logistics, who was picking up Ella, what bills needed paying, without ever actually connecting. I realized with a deep, bone-tired weariness that I just didn't care anymore. The effort of maintaining the facade was exhausting, and I was too tired to keep pretending. I'd stopped loving her somewhere along the way. Maybe I'd stopped the day I saw her in that red dress, kissing another man. Maybe it had been a slower death. But it was gone. It was a Friday night in late October when everything fell apart again. Nicole said she was going out with friends from the gallery. Some new exhibit opening, then drinks after. "Don't wait up," she'd said, kissing my cheek like it was the most normal thing in the world. I went to bed around 11, Ella already asleep in her room. I woke at 1:30 a.m. to an empty bed, that cold space beside me where Nicole should have been. The dread was instant, familiar, and sickening. It was like being transported back 7 years, to that moment I'd seen that blue message bubble. I called her cell. She answered on the 4th ring, her voice too bright, too loud, too slurred. "Yay, oh my gosh, we had so much wine. I'm just gonna crash at Tasha's place, okay? It's way safer than driving. Love you, bye." I stared at the phone in the darkness. It was the same lie, the exact same tone she'd used in Seattle. The contempt in it was so casual, so lazy, it made me physically sick. But I wasn't the same man I'd been in Seattle. I wasn't going to wait and wonder and torture myself with uncertainty. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but it wasn't with pain. It was with cold, clear rage. I opened the Find My Friends app on my phone. Tasha lived in Beaverton, less than 3 miles from our house. The little icon with Nicole's face wasn't in Beaverton. It was pulsing steadily from a downtown Portland location. I zoomed in on the map, my hand surprisingly steady. My breath caught in my throat. The Sentinel Hotel. One of the most expensive, exclusive luxury hotels in Portland. The kind of place that cost $500 a night minimum. I sat there in the darkness, the phone screen the only light in the room, and I felt something shift inside me. It was like a door closing, a final, definite sound. I wasn't sad, I wasn't even angry. I was done. I didn't sleep. I just waited, lying in the dark, planning. I wasn't a husband anymore. I was an engineer, I was building a case, collecting data, preparing for what came next. At 6 a.m., I opened my laptop and pulled up our joint credit card statement. I scrolled through the charges from the previous night, my expression neutral, almost clinical. 10:47 p.m., charge for 128, the Sentinel rooftop bar. 11:23 p.m., charge for $512, the Sentinel Hotel lodging. She was using my money. The money I earned from the job that wore me down, that kept me away from my daughter, that paid for this house and her art gallery hobby. She was using it to fund her betrayal. The injustice of it lit something cold and bright inside me. This wasn't passion. This wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was calculated, planned. She'd charged her a fare to our joint account like it was groceries. I needed to know who. I needed the full picture before I moved. I went to the family desktop computer in the office, the one we both used for bills and shared documents. Nicole had once accused me of being controlling, for wanting to know all our passwords. I'd backed down then, not wanting to be that husband. I guessed her email password on the first try. Ella's birthday. Her inbox was open, and I saw them immediately. Emails from someone named Alex. I started scrolling, that same cold sickness settling in my stomach that I'd felt 7 years ago. Alex Thornton. I did a quick search. Dr. Alex Thornton, a prominent cosmetic surgeon with a practice in downtown Portland. Married, 3 kids, his family photos all over his professional website. He was standing with his wife and children, all of them smiling in matching white shirts on some beach. The cliché of it was almost insulting. She'd done it again, and with the same type of man. Successful, married, unavailable. I spent the next 2 hours reading through emails and printing the most damning ones. By the time the sun came up, I had a file folder an inch thick. That morning, I was sitting in a glass-walled office on the 28th floor of the U.S. Bancorp Tower in downtown Portland. The view was impressive, the kind of office that cost a fortune just to rent for an hour. I slid a USB drive across the polished conference table to Victoria Chen, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Portland. I'd done my research. She had a 92% success rate and a reputation for absolutely destroying opposing counsel. Here are the hotel receipts, the credit card statements, and copies of the emails, I said, my voice calm and businesslike. I've organized them chronologically. There are also screenshots from the Find My Friends app showing her location at the hotel when she claimed to be at a friend's house. Victoria looked through the file, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. This is very thorough, Mr. Hayes. I want the house, I said clearly. I want primary custody of my daughter. I want this done efficiently and completely. What do I need to do? She looked at me for a long moment. I'll need 3 days to prepare the motions. During that time, you act completely normal. Can you do that? For 3 days, I performed normal, like it was a role in a play. I made dinner. I sat across the table from Nicole and asked, how was work? I listened to her talk about the gallery, about some new artists they were featuring, her voice just meaningless noise. I felt a strange, cold power. I was looking at a woman who had no idea she'd already lost everything. The outcome was decided. She just didn't know it yet. On Saturday morning, Ella left for an all-day debate tournament at her school. She'd be gone from 8 a.m. until at least 6 p.m. It was perfect timing. Nicole was on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, probably texting Alex, probably planning their next hotel visit. I made myself coffee and sat in the armchair across from her. How was Tasha's place last weekend? I asked, my voice perfectly level and casual. She looked up and I saw something flicker across her face. Wariness. Fine. Why? I'm just curious, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Does she live at the Sentinel now? Or does Alex? The color drained from Nicole's face so fast I thought she might pass out. Her phone slipped from her hand onto the couch cushion. It wasn't the shock and guilt I'd seen at Bellini's. This was the pure panic of a trapped animal who knew the cage door had just slammed shut. Liam. I know, Nicole. I've known all week. I've known since the moment you charged a $500 hotel room to our joint credit card. I stood up and walked to the hall closet, pulled out a suitcase, and dropped it at her feet. You did this to Ella again. You looked our daughter in the eye and put her through this nightmare a second time. You made me uproot my life, leave my job, move across the country, and remarry you, and you did the exact same thing. My voice was steady, cold, final. That is the one thing I will never forgive. Pack a bag. You need to leave. She started screaming then. Crying, begging, trying to grab my arms. It wasn't the same. It meant nothing. Please, we can work through this. Then she shifted tactics, started blaming me. My coldness, my distance, how I'd never forgiven her for Seattle. You never let it go. You've been punishing me for 7 years. I just stood there, a stone wall. I'm filing for divorce on Monday morning. I want you out of this house now. She tried bargaining, promising therapy and change and anything I wanted. When that didn't work, she got angry. You can't throw me out. This is my house too. I have rights. Then call the police and explain why you're here, I said calmly. I'm sure they'd be interested in the documentation I have. She finally left in an Uber, still screaming about her rights and how I couldn't do this. The moment the door closed behind her, I turned the deadbolt. Then I called a 24-hour locksmith. The house was no longer a home. It was a fortress, and I had to protect my daughter. Within 2 hours, every lock in the house had been changed. Monday morning at 9 a.m., I was sitting in a private office at Columbia River Bank. I presented the initial divorce filing papers to the bank manager, along with my attorney's letter. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a tactical strike. I closed our joint checking and savings accounts, transferring every dollar into a new account under only my name. It was money I'd earned. Every single paycheck had come from my job. Nicole's part-time gallery work barely covered her car payment. I left her with access to her own credit cards and the $200 that was in her personal checking account. It wasn't revenge. It was severance, a clean cut. My attorney had been clear. Oregon was a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity could still influence custody and asset division, especially when it showed a pattern of poor judgment and instability. By noon, Victoria had filed an emergency motion for temporary sole use of the marital home, citing Nicole's infidelity, her emotional volatility, and the paramount need for stability for Ella during her critical junior year and college application process. The judge granted the emergency motion that afternoon. The house was legally mine to control until the divorce was finalized. When Nicole showed up on Wednesday with Tasha and another friend to get her things, I spoke through the new video intercom system I'd installed. My voice was flat, emotionless. Our attorneys will schedule a supervised time for you to collect your belongings. You are not welcome here without prior arrangement and legal supervision. I watched on the security camera feed as she raged on the front porch, pounding on the door, screaming about how I couldn't do this. Tasha eventually convinced her to leave. For the first time in a decade, I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel cruel. I felt safe. I felt like I was finally protecting what mattered, my daughter and the stability she deserved. That evening, Ella came home from school. I'd been dreading this conversation, but it had to happen. We sat together on the couch, and I told her the truth as gently as I could. Your mom and I are getting divorced, I said, holding her hand. This time it's final. I'm not trying to turn you against her, but you're 17 now. You deserve honesty. Your mother had an affair, just like in Seattle. I can't do this again. Ella was quiet for a long moment. Then she squeezed my hand and said, I know, Dad. I'm not blind. I saw how she was acting. I heard the late-night phone calls. The fact that my daughter had noticed, had been carrying this knowledge, broke something in me. But she was also stronger than I'd given her credit for. I'm not going anywhere, I told her. You're my priority. You've always been my priority. I had zero interest in confronting Alex Thornton directly. I wouldn't risk an assault charge or a harassment complaint. But my justice was surgical and precise. As part of the divorce discovery process, my attorney subpoenaed Dr. Thornton's testimony, forcing him to answer questions about the affair under oath, making it part of the public legal record. Simultaneously, a plain manila envelope, mailed from a post office across town, arrived at the Thornton residence. It contained copies of the hotel receipts and several of the more explicit emails between him and Nicole. My hands were completely clean. I'd simply provided consequences. 6 months later, the divorce was final. I bought out Nicole's half of the equity in the house using money from a retirement account. I was granted primary physical custody of Ella, with Nicole getting alternating weekends and one evening per week. The settlement was heavily in my favor. Victoria had been worth every penny. The hardest part was watching Ella process everything. She was angry at her mother, hurt by the betrayal, but also grieving the loss of the family she'd thought we were. I got her into therapy, gave her space to feel everything she needed to feel. Now, 8 months after that Friday night when I woke to an empty bed, I stood in the kitchen on a crisp fall evening. The smell of coffee filled the air. On the counter sat Ella's acceptance letter to Reed College, her first-choice school, with a generous scholarship package. The fracture line of betrayal would always be there. It was a permanent scar. But the house wasn't cold anymore. It wasn't filled with suspicion and pretense and lies. It was just peace. Ella came into the kitchen, backpack over her shoulder, heading to a friend's house. She kissed my cheek. "Love you, Dad." "Love you too, sweetheart." As I watched her leave, I realized the unseen man was finally gone. I was present, I was a father, and for the first time in years, I was free.